I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. Happy once again to be joined by two guys that you know and love. I know and love them. Let's go ahead and introduce them, despite the fact that they need no introduction. First up is the jack of all trades, who has mastered them all, the senior editor of SureDog.com, and my man, Ben Duffy. What's up, Ben?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Great week to be on with you guys once again.
All right, of course. And we have the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers, the associate editor of SureDog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. What's up, Jay?
I'm white knuckling it here. This upcoming week is going to be a very busy, active, constant week of coverage because we're going to have PFL, Bellator, and UFC big shows back to back. But you know, it's another day in the life of an MMA editor here. I'm going to drop off my stat of the week. Stat of the week is 2,000 minus 2,000 in particular, because Alexander Romanov, ahead of his UFC Vegas 53 fight with Chase Sherman, closed as a minus 2,000 betting favorite, which is the biggest in UFC history. Bigger than, and think of all the names we've had over the years: Demetrius Johnson, John Jones, Anderson Silva, Ronda Rousey, Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes. No fighter has ever reached that pinnacle of betting numbers. And Alexander Romanov, 15-0, big old lug, losing some weight. He's the guy. So that's your weird Jeopardy stat of the week right there.
Definitely. We're gonna have a brief discussion about Romanov a little bit later on, but before we get into the bulk of the show, remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. All right, gentlemen. So the first order of business, UFC Vegas 53 headlined by Marlon Vera versus Rob Font. As we said last week, there wasn't really a lot to this card. Of course, the main event was fireworks, as we thought. We thought it would be. That matchup on paper was spectacular, and it lived up to that, in my opinion. But we don't really have a whole lot to talk about on this card necessarily. So fortunately, though, we do have UFC 274 coming up. Is it 274? I got the number right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I actually got the number right. Yeah, I'm losing track of the numbers. UFC 274 coming up this weekend, so we'll have plenty to talk about as far as previewing that. But let's go ahead and get the latest offering from the Apex Center out of the way here. So I'm gonna throw a question out there to you fellas. What impressed you more, Marlon Vera's power or Rob Font's ability to recover in that main event?
For me, it was Vera's. It was Vera's power, because Font recovered well a couple of times, but most of Vera's knockdowns were in the closing seconds of rounds, and in pretty much every case, he didn't really go in for the kill with a whole lot of urgency. So Font was given the opportunity to recover, and to his credit, he did so repeatedly. But no, the real eye opener was the difference in how each man reacted when he was struck by the other. Because, Jay's our stat man, but I believe he said that Font outlanded Vera by like 112 strikes.
Yeah, he grossly outlanded him statistically.
Yeah. Yet the fight felt like it was like some 48-43 fight, because every round that Vera won felt like a 10-8 round, even though they probably shouldn't have been. And all the ones that Font won were just barely. The power was the surprise.
Ben, sorry, Jay, don't mean to step on your toes, Ben, but did you watch the fight with or without sound? I know a lot of times you listen to music as you're watching the fights. Did you do that this time?
Or just mute, and I'll just turn the sound back on if I see there's a replay, so I can see why they're replaying. But yeah, I watched this fight without sound.
So I did as well, and I thought maybe that informed my take on this. I would say Vera's power was impressive. Font's recoverability was impressive, but the most standout attribute in this fight to me was Vera's durability. Because the statistical outlanding while that didn't really mean much when at the end of the day, watching that fight without any commentary to influence me or whatnot, it felt like Rob Font was clearly in control in a lot of in large stretches of these rounds, and then he'd get clubbed with one good shot and be stumbling around, and that would sway the round. Like I just imagine almost anyone else in front of Font taking those same punches, especially the body punches, to see Vera still pumping on full pedal to the metal on the gas tank. After getting some of those shots to the liver, after getting punches to the floating rib, after taking switch kicks and whatnot, all that body work, and he still kept going and turned up the intensity throughout the fight. Vera's durability was the key attribute to me in this. Jay, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, Vera's ability to take all the punches, like 271 significant strikes. I mean, yes, a significant strike is any strike at distance, basically, aside from like a standing hammer. I don't know. The stats are weird in that regard. But the way that Font reacted from taking those shots reminded me of a recent fight. The result was very different. But when Deiveson Figueiredo fought Brandon Moreno for the third time, when Moreno would land flush, you could tell. He stunned Figueiredo. He got to him. Now, granted, Figueiredo was the one who ended up dropping him 3 times. But whenever Moreno was dropped, you didn't think that he was done or in big trouble or something like he just got knocked off his feet or something like that. It wasn't that kind of damage. Whereas Moreno seemed to be having the more clubbing, damaging blows in that fight. Now, when it came to this, it's similar. That Font landed, hundreds and hundreds of strikes. I was, however, extremely impressed by Rob Font's recoverability because he got dropped and was very close to being finished. He would make it to the end of the round, or Vera would let him get to the end of the round, depending on how you look at it. And then he'd come out in the next round and firing. Like, he got hurt so badly at the end of the second round, and Font came back and outlanded Vera 2-1 in the next round. Granted, he got dropped again, but the point is, despite his face looking like, one of those Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies or any of that going on, he didn't really ever seem to be affected by that, which was shocking. He would get hurt. He'd get hurt badly, and then he'd recover. He'd make it back, and he'd still be in the fight. That kind of damage is the kind that knocks you out of a fight. Like, there were multiple times I thought, Vera, you could have finished this job, maybe, but he didn't. And Font just very, very much surprised me. But Vera's power was comical. You're like, oh, there it is. There's that one shot. There's the sweet chin music, the side kick to the face that knocked Font flying. This fight taught me more than probably all of the rest of the fights in this card combined. And that sucks.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. That was my initial impression when that matchup was made, was that this was Font's fight. That this would be a fight that he can control at range. Even if it got inside and got more into a sloppy brawl, like, he's good as a technical brawler. I just thought this was Rob Font's fight right here, and was proven wrong. And I think if we're talking about a less durable person, this would have been. I mean, he was getting shellacked. Like, Vera was getting shellacked with punches over the first 2 rounds until that one shot lands. Font is light in the brain and rinse and repeat almost every other round afterwards. So, but now the question is, we had our expectations. Rob Font is someone who, at least on the broadcast, was described as a perennial contender. I think he's earned that status as high as he's stayed in the rankings for as long. But now we've got Marlon Vera out there, clearly able to handle someone of Font's caliber. So what do we do with him next, fellas?
I wrote the matches to make column for Sherdog after this event, and I suggested they match him with Petr Yan. I think it sounds like a fantastic fight. 2, the UFC needs to decide what to do, because it has a bunch of former champs, like, just hovering like hijacked airplanes circling the airport. you know, Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, they're out there. Henry Cejudo says he's re-entered the USADA testing pool, obviously as a prelude to coming back to fight, and he's basically said he doesn't want to fight at flyweight anymore. He's instead, starting to jaw at Alex Volkanovski a weight class up. Jose Aldo should probably have the next title shot. I mean, he's on a 3-fight win streak that includes Fontan Vera, and hopefully that would keep the UFC from making a third Jan versus Sterling fight immediately. Yeah, I think Jan versus Vera is the perfect one to make right now.
I look at the bantamweight rankings and I struggle because I am still of the Joe Silva winners fight winners type of thing. But then I look at fighters that are on win streaks and I go, I don't think I really want to see that. Like, I don't mean Vera versus Dillashaw, I guess, but I am much more interested in a 4-way ex-champ tournament to sort out bantamweight. I mean, you can mix and match how you will, but give me Dillashaw and Cejudo up at bantamweight, and give me Aldo Cruz, and then the winners, and go out from there, which would leave Peter Yan as the odd man out. Hussein Hagen's on a losing streak. You don't want that. Do you really want to see Moran Valashvili versus Marlon Vera?
Nope.
No. But he's going to fight somebody, so I guess that kind of stinks for Merab. I mean, Yan is just, he makes sense because I want to keep him out of the title picture. Like, okay, he has 2 losses to the champion. Whatever you feel about those losses, it doesn't matter. They're L's. You look on Sherdog Fight Finder, it's red. It's not green, it's red, which means he didn't officially win the fight. And selling a third one, maybe you can, because you can market the controversial nature of it. I don't want to see it again. I think Sterling showed me in the rematch exactly how he would approach when they fought again. Like, if they fought a third time, he made the right adjustments. And I don't know if Jan can counter those adjustments given the success Aljo had in the first fight. And I guess all of that to say, yeah, Vera versus Jan's fine. That sounds good to me. I just really, really need the UFC, personally, to figure out what they're doing with this logjam of almost title challengers right now.
Yeah, this is until you guys like reading the question, on the outline and kind of thinking it over, it didn't get as complex until I'm hearing you guys speak and kind of laying all the pieces out. Because the first thing that popped in my mind was like, man, I would love the Dillashaw fight. I'd love to see Marlon Vera and TJ Dillashaw, because one, I'm still a little salty about Dillashaw's prior suspension. He has a loss, in that time. So I'm not ready to throw him in as a title contender just yet. I want to see him get 2 clean wins before we have that conversation. So I thought that would make sense. But it's just so many people and style-wise, a lot of these things do make sense. The only one that doesn't make sense to me is a rematch with Aldo. That's the only one where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of cool on that.
So of course that's the one he's asking for.
Yeah. And as I understand, as he should, he wants to get that one back, as a lot of fighters think. So fine, and if they booked it, I'm sure it will be a fun fight. But that's the least appealing of all the options to me.
It's more of a stay busy fight than it is an actual.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I'm kind of on board with Vera versus Cruz.
Okay.
Because I think it will be for Cruz, it's more of a shit or get off the pot moment where it's like, okay, are you still the elite of the elite? Are you still there? Are you still able to turn away a surging contender? And we don't see Cruz active enough, and this would be slap in the middle of the lion's den. Can you handle it? I'm okay with Cruz being in that situation because he tends to fare well in those situations.
And it's to me, and maybe you guys, if you want to touch on this, it's weird to me that all of these names we've talked about don't have fights scheduled. They don't have anything on the books. Like Cruz hasn't fought since December. Like, he's healthy right now. I don't remember him getting surgery or hurting himself when he beat Pedro Munoz. I think he's okay. I know this is weird, right? Dominic Cruz appears to be healthy. And Aldo's ready to go. And Dillashaw, I don't think
He's
did
on a
he
double
have
secret suspension, probably.
did he have shoulder surgery or something, or no, that was when he was
That
out.
was during the suspension. Yeah, the
Yeah,
shoulder
like
surgery. So
my point stands that these guys have the ability to take these fights, at least as far as we as media are concerned, knowing what they've been up to. And the UFC needs bodies to fill out these fight cards, and yet for some reason they're on the shelf. These are fighters you don't want to have on the shelf, and that's what makes it so weird. These are fighters you can sell. You can make a 5-round main event with any of those names. You could Cruz Aldo. You could put that thing on the co-main event of a pay-per-view. It's a 5-rounder, and we go, yes, please, I'll take it. So it's weird to me that this is happening.
I mean, I guess this will be the definition of first world problems if you're Sean Shelby and McMahon, because you have all these pieces that, as far as we know, are not injured and can, go through a training camp and get ready for an upcoming fight. And they're all exciting matchups, and they're all just sitting there, like, presumably waiting for the phone to ring. So,
yeah,
I mean, at this point, like, this would be a great time for, that proposed tournament to just kind of put these guys together, even if you do a random draw style like Bellator did with Grand Prix. Did I see when they did that? Was that the featherweight?
Pitbull, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so like to do some sort of random, for a proposed Grand Prix, like this will be the time to roll something out like that, because you got enough qualified guys sitting there, and you got all the exciting matchups sitting there, and we'd be happy with almost any like iteration of these names, any combination we're good with. So, Grand Prix, fellas, let's go.
Aldo versus Cejudo, Aldo versus Dillashaw, Aldo versus Cruz. Yeah. Every single one of those fights to go.
Yeah. And each one is not dependent on one name, because like Cejudo would be a great injection of energy into this division. But even if he wasn't coming back, even if he did just go to featherweight, or he just kept just talking from the sidelines, we still aren't suffering for any level of action and any level of relevance between any of these fights. So, I'm all for some sort of tournament style to settle this debate, because this is quite a logjam. This is more of a logjam than I think we've seen like at lightweight, because at least there were more pieces of the puzzle that didn't quite make sense, despite the high level of matchups, which we never lacked at lightweight. But I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. The validity of certain title runs just wasn't there in lightweight, but it's here at bantamweight, so I'm looking forward to it. All right, fellas, let's keep things pushing here. We got to talk Andrei Arlovski, fought on the card, a guy who comes up in on our show a lot, because he is an interesting guy for several reasons. One reason is that he is one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, undisputed fact right here. But we're going to dispute something here. We're going to debate about something here. Our friend of MMA fighting, Jed Meshew, he has claimed that Andrei Arlovski is the greatest heavyweight of all time based on his total body of work. Jed, we love you. You tripping, bro. Ben, Jay, do you agree with me, or are you wrong?
His longevity is remarkable. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would never have expected to find myself saying in 2022, Andrei Arlovski is on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC. I mean, I assumed he'd be out of the sport, and probably in a sad way, just on a string of bad knockout losses. So his longevity has been remarkable. But his current 4-fight win streak is held together with more smoke, mirrors, bubblegum, baling wire, and duct tape. I mean, 2 of the wins are over sub-UFC level fighters in Chase Sherman and Jared Vanderaa. One against Jake Collier on Saturday is going to be on Sherdog's Robbery of the Year list, even if it doesn't win. It's one of the worst decisions of the year so far. Like, just frankly, he's on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC, but shouldn't be. You know, he's fighting a couple dudes that didn't belong in the UFC, and one fight he shouldn't have won. And if not for that win streak, we're not even having this conversation. So, yeah, he's among the greatest heavyweights of his era, but of all time, no. He was the best heavyweight in the world when the heavyweight division was even thinner than it is now. We're talking about like 2004, 2005, when, you know, Frank Mir is out. He fights Tim Sylvia a couple times. By the way, against Tim Sylvia, his main rival of the era, he is 1-2. So he's not even the best UFC heavyweight of that era. And then he's had a couple of, you know, serious dips since then, and just keeps coming back to relevance. Like, he's going to be kind of like the baseball player that ends up with 3,000 hits because he played for like 22 seasons, you know, but was maybe like a one-time all-star, you know, like once early in his career. That's more the Arlovski thing. He is not the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's not the greatest heavyweight of the time of his prime. Like, he's one of the 10 greatest heavyweights of all time, probably.
When you look at Arlovski and his career, though, he has basically all of the heavyweight records besides like a couple stoppages, like knockouts. Obviously, Derek Lewis has that one, and a few others. I mean, he's got the most fights that has ever of any heavyweight. He's got the most wins of any heavyweight. I mean, he has the most decision wins as well, but that's kind of a symptom of, you know, his new style and how many wins he has. He's fought longer in the cage. He's landed more strikes. It's that remarkable longevity that no one in this sport would have predicted, including Andrei Arlovski. Like, there is no possible way that you looked at the losing streak mostly by knockout of Fedor, Brett Rogers, Bigfoot Silva over in Strikeforce. I think he made it the distance in that one. And then Sergei Karatanov knocking his block off. You look at those and go, okay, he's going. And then his next fights were like pro elite, where he's fighting literally Travis Fulton. I'm not making that up. So that was the end. And then he went to one championship. Forgot that extra one, that little additional note.
Okay. Okay, I take that back. I forgot that he had kicked all the child porn out of Travis Fulton's head. So he is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Jed's right. Yep.
And then Tim Sylvia did the same when he punted him when he was on the ground in one championship. Man, there has to be a word. There must be like a word in German that I don't know. That just to describe this kind of thing.
Schweinhund.
Not that one. The remarkable ability to persevere when it's over. When it's all over. This career is done. You're shot. Your chin's gone. Sergei Karatanov barely touched you, and you're out. That kind of feeling that we think when we go into it. And then he comes back, and then he has a really, really bad losing streak. Stipe knocked him all the way out. Overeem kicked it, you know, what do you say? Kicked third grade out of his skull. Barnett beat him up. Ngannou did that thing he did. A horrible losing streak. Still comes back, fights out of it, beats up a guy in a diaper and a 7-foot tall dude, and, you know, he's coming back around. He keeps doing this thing. Like, I made the joke, you know, he can't keep getting away with this. The Jesse Pinkman thing. It's I don't understand. He is an absolute marvel in this sport because he's 43. He's changed his style almost as many times as he's changed his haircut, and it's still working at a UFC level. And that's what is so crazy to me, that Andrei Arlovski is beating okay names like Tanner Boser, Carlos Felipe, who keeps testing positive. It's not total. I mean, you look at the division, of course it's on the low level, but it's still heavyweight, where the only losses he has in recent memory are the one to Aspinall, who's a top 5 guy, Rosenstrike, who can knock anybody out, Sakai, which was a great robbery, if I remember correctly, and Walt Harris, I think it was a drug test thing. So he's only losing to the best guys in the world at 43 after 38 fights. So you have to look and go, he's got to have some sort of special note by his name that's more than simply an Iron Man, like a Cal Ripken kind of stat that he's just done it for so long, because he's still succeeding and he's doing it his way. And he like think of all the times it's like when he went to ATT after leaving Jackson Wink for so long and transformed and got better. It's shocking. I'm going to have to start talking to people in other languages to find out if there are special words to describe this gentleman and his accolades, because they're unique. That's the thing. They're unique. It surpasses the Jim Millers of the world, who can come back and circle back and keep winning at age. It's different. And I guess that's how to specify him, because he is the pit bull. He's not the pit bull. He's not pit bull, one word. He's the pit bull. Separate. There's spaces between them. That is the differentiation between him and the rest of the pack. And I got to give it to him. He's the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Yeah, so it's just like he deserves a category. He deserves to be mentioned in the conversations of surrounding greatness in the heavyweight division. But to be called a heavyweight GOAT is sorry, Jed. He's in
the room though. He's
I'm glad you brought up Cal Ripken Jr. because that was the first name that came to mind for me. It's like, would you call Cal Ripken the greatest baseball player of all time? Probably not, but he deserves some level of discussion because of his longevity and the stats that he accrued over the time. But I've got another analogy for you that might be a little more on point, that's outside of the sports world. Of course, I relate everything to hip hop. So would you call Snoop the greatest rapper of all time? Because I wouldn't. He's got a lot of things in his favor. He's got the longevity, which means a lot of albums. At one point, he was the hottest name out there. But would you call him the greatest? Because just like Arlovski, he wasn't even the greatest in his era. When you look at the year he debuted, I believe was the same year that Nas and Wu-Tang and Mobb Deep, and you look at the names that also came out around that same time. So this is the same sort of discussion. When we talk about the greatest as far as hip hop is concerned, Snoop will come up in the conversation, but not as the number one. And I think that's an appropriate place for Arlovski to land when it comes to heavyweight greatness.
And so that losing streak of brutal knockouts that Jay mentioned earlier, that's kind of like that phase where he decided his name was going to be Snoop Lion and released that really embarrassing reggae album.
Yeah, or and then the No Limit, the first No Limit album.
Oh yeah,
like that. Yeah,
I'm glad he got to kind of dance in front of the tank. That was cool.
I mean, that was great for his career, great for his life and whatnot.
It was that one win in the long string of losses.
And then, another thing that adds to the greatness of Master P's legacy, but that's another story as well.
And right now maybe he's in that reality show phase where we learned about Snoop that he just literally lives on nothing but weed and fried chicken.
Yeah,
that's like how are you that skinny?
This is to have this conversation about Arlovski after he barely survived Jake Collier is to me we're having this discussion when Snoop got out-rapped by Trippie Redd or something, where it's like he barely hung in with somebody who ain't really all that. That's the level of absurdity that I find us having this discussion right now. Sorry, Jed. Come on, Jed.
So you're saying that, Jed. You're saying that Arlovski is the gatekeeper to the greatest heavyweights of all time.
All the rest of the top 15 have knocked him out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that might not be far from the truth, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Barnett choked him, but same difference.
Yeah. I mean, we love Jed for his off the wall thoughts about things, and it's very entertaining to talk to him about MMA because of that, because this guy can come out of left field. He makes a lot of sense a lot of times. They say one of them times.
I think what you're ultimately saying is that the UFC needs to bring back a Snoop cast with Snoop and Arlovski. Yeah, I'd watch all of that. I don't care. It wouldn't get tired like Faber because they started repeating the same things again. I think Arlovski would keep it fresh.
Well, I think him and Faber were just too high together. Like that's really the problem.
Remember
They
those
were
big
both
orange
just too
juices
high.
that Faber would drink? That they were clearly not just orange juices.
Oh,
That he'd get
I'm sure there was something
like
special going
Fight
on in
Four
those.
rolled around, and you're like, Faber, where are you
Yeah,
right now?
it was some THC oil or something blended in there.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Well, let's keep things pushing here. We're gonna move on to quick hits. I've got 30 seconds on the clock. Let's see here. Who will I assign these questions to? Jay, I'll start with you.
All right.
If Grant Dawson gets a top 15 lightweight next, who do you think he matches up well against?
It is an ultimate Shark Tank when you start moving up the division. It is a step. Every step up is one bigger one than that. It's, besides Conor McGregor, forget that. He shouldn't be ranked at the lightweight going in the UFC. I really would like to see if he can apply his grappling on Diego Ferreira. Can he? I mean, Ferreira's on a losing streak, but can he out grapple him like others have recently? I think that makes more sense than a Gamrot, than a Dan Hooker. Just give me Diego and
All right.
Footloose. Give me the Footloose walkout.
Okay. All right. Not bad. Ben, you're up next here. Let's see here. Before fighting Romanov, the UFC signed Chase Sherman on a 3-fight skid to a multi-fight deal. How long does he have before he gets cut again?
I bet he actually probably fights out the 3-fight deal. He got this deal after being cut, rightly so, for not being a UFC level heavyweight, for being willing to fight a bruiser on short notice. For that, at least he'll get his other 2 fights, I bet. And he comes cheap.
Oh, comes cheap. That is the most important thing right there. Comes cheap. That is the correct answer. You come cheap.
He was the BKFC champion, though. He can't be that cheap. Like 15.
Ooh. All right, Jay. All right, Jay. Jay, would you mind reading a question to me so I don't sound crazy?
I know that one of your all-time favorite fighters just won this weekend, and Darren Flippenberger's Elkins. And we learned in his post-fight interview that his UFC contract is over. He's 37 years old, and he's won 3 of his last 4 fights. Will the UFC re-sign him, or will they let him float away?
Might I direct you to our last little conversation about coming cheap? Darren Elkins, how much money are you willing to fight for? But if I'm Darren Elkins, I'm not going to take that UFC check, that pay cut that's probably going to come up. Go to BKFC where you can just bleed profusely, and it'll be something different. Like, he is the guy who's made for something like BKFC. Like, that is kind of where Darren Elkins probably belongs, although he won't be able to wrestle anybody, but he'll be able to bleed, and that's what he really enjoys. All right.
I don't want to see him fight Chad Mendes again. We already learned that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably exactly what they do.
That is 100% what they would do.
Oh,
and
wow.
Have you seen Chad Mendes?
I'd rather not run into that man in a dark alley.
He is bricked up.
Holy smokes. He is the lightweight to Alan Belcher's heavyweight in terms of how ridiculous he is now. It's wild.
Yeah, like, wow. To mention Alan Belcher and Darren Elkins on the same show and not mention horrible tattoos, we're really messing up, guys. All right,
well, then they should just sign Hannah Brahau and go 3-way and rock it that way.
Oh yeah, and maybe throw a Brock penis sword in there as well. Fellas, let's keep things pushing because we got one more question, and I think I'll mix things up a little bit. So instead of each getting 30 seconds to talk about it, how about we just put a minute on the clock for all 3 of us to have a little brief discussion about Alexander Romanov worthy of being the biggest betting favorite in UFC history. Guys, is he worthy of being the UFC betting favorite, the biggest UFC betting favorite in history?
Yeah. Just stylistically, a lockdown wrestler versus a guy who by heavyweight standards does not have one-shot power. You're looking for how safe a bet it is because you don't want to eat, the plus 1,200 or 1,500 that's coming back the other way. This was a safe bet at minus 2,500 or minus 2,000.
That's really surprising because I completely disagree because of the fact that it is a heavyweight fight. And Chase Sherman has a 93% knockout rate with knees and elbows and short shots. And I expected, Romanov comes in, he gets hit. The possibility is there such that I don't think that Chase Sherman had a 3% chance to win the fight. I think maybe 8, 10%, 5%, whatever. But 2,000 biggest favorite of all time. I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I mean, definitely deserve to be a huge betting favorite, but I think of matchups like Chad Mendes versus Cody McKenzie, and I'm like, okay, that is a gross mismatch. That should be a betting favorite.
Where there's no chance that they will have a win, like Shevchenko fights.
Exactly, you don't have that puncher's chance. Just statistically speaking, like it just doesn't happen there. So that's what I see as something that should have been the biggest betting favorite in UFC history.
I guess when you're taking on like arguably Team Alpha Male's best guy at the time, and your only weapon is a guillotine, you're in fucking trouble.
It's like this probably ain't going to go well for you.
And this is pre-USADA Mendes, where he looks like what he looks like now in BKFC.
Yeah, exactly. And Cody McKenzie looked like he just left the bar stool when he walked out there.
Seriously, he walked out with somebody else's, or no, he walked out with Dick's Sporting Goods shorts on.
Was it that fight that he had like the white basketball shorts with the pockets and the price tag still on?
I think so. I want to say it was. If we were corrected, we'll find out.
No, it was the fight after that. But everybody knows about the shorts with the tag still on them. He also borrowed a mouth guard for that fight, which is very, very disgusting.
Well, they just left his gym bag or something in the hotel room, and like, man, well. Oh well. I'm sure the sponsors
couldn't even get him like a boil and bite mouth guard while they were getting some shorts.
Yeah, like there's got to be a Dick's Sporting Good on the script, right?
Yeah,
somewhere close to the script. All right, fellas, let's keep things pushing here because we do have the greatest title segment in all of media history to get to, and that's I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons, where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met. Ben, let's keep the ball in your court. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I was slightly surprised to find out that former featherweight in the UFC, former lightweight contender in the UFC, Dan Hooker, is calling a stop to his most recent featherweight experiments after just one fight and has announced that he's moving back up to lightweight. I'm happy to hear that. I'm always happy to hear about fighters just willingly moving up to closer to their, walking weight, even though I'm sure that Dan Hooker's weight cut is substantial even at 155 because I've been in the same room as the guy and he is absolutely titanic. But yeah, he looked miserable at featherweight. He made the weight just fine, and there was certainly speculation about that. But then, he got knocked out by Arnold Allen in the first round and just, he never really got into gear. It's obviously a desperation move at this point. He's kind of casting about for, he's lost 4 of his last 5. And, he's casting out for what's going to keep him relevant and possibly even keep him employed. But whatever the reasons, I am happy that he's moving back up to 155. And if anything, he should try 170 because, he's lost 4 of his last 5, but they were to Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Islam Makhachev, and Arnold Allen. That is a fucking murderer's row. Like, he beat Nasrat Haqparast, probably a top 10, certainly a top 15 lightweight at the time he beat him. Like, he is still a competitively valid guy. He just needs some sort of break, some sort of change, and staying at 155 or even moving up to 170 sounds great to me.
Good one there. Jay, what's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, first to answer the people that are screaming at their video a few minutes ago, it was the Sam Stout fight that Cody McKenzie had his shorts with the tag on him. It was not Chad Mendes. It's what happens. Anyway, speaking of,
you think Sam Stout saw the tag on those shorts and just started spending his win bonus already in his mind?
Oh yeah, he knew.
It's I'm gonna get my wife a car with a bow on top of it, and
oh yeah,
it's like that Amazon card that you got preloaded with all this stuff. Like as soon as that check clears, buy now.
That's yes, exactly. That is add complete purchase. Let's see. I mean, you gotta get weird here for my I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcon segment. And leave the UFC and talk about job security that is very strange and shouldn't be around. In BKFC, talking about Chad Mendes and Darren Elkins and all the other and Alan Belcher. Well, another name that is a BKFC fighter has been for a while in Joe Diesel Riggs. He's been around since BKFC number 3. And he fought Brock Weaver, of all people, back when he did that. So he's been working his way through the division, winning fights. He knocked out Melvin Gillard last year. He got beat by Hector Lombard for their title because of a cut. So it wasn't just that he got smoked or whatever. So he gets in there to fight Lorenzo Hunt, and he decides to throw down with a faster, stronger, younger, heavier-handed guy, and he gets cold-cocked and put all the way out. And then he kind of comes to, and he's complaining, but he was knocked out for a while. And he's had, gosh, let me think. He's had at least 80 fights when you add MMA and boxing and top fights and BK. And you look at him, and he's 39, and you go, wow, you're going to keep doing this for another 5 years at least, aren't you? And you look at that knockout, and you go, I don't want to see it. But then you go, well, he's beating everybody else basically along the way, so he's going to do it. Yeah, Joe Riggs lost a fight, and it's probably not the end of Joe Riggs' career. So I guess all I want to say is, well, hail to the Fight Master champion. Do whatever he wants.
I have a feeling this isn't the last time we'll be talking about when is Joe Riggs gonna hang up the gloves. Yeah, man, seems like he's just gonna go on forever. All right, I'm not surprised. Mr. Falcon's moment comes courtesy of the California State Athletic Commission, because they appointed Ronda Rousey's mom, Anne Maria DeMars, to their commission, and she will be in charge of, she'll be one of the people voting and in charge of like rule changes and whatnot, and appointing officials and that sort of just the logistics of this commission operating. I think it's notable for two reasons. One, while her name is most known in MMA circles as being the mother of the biggest name in women's mixed martial arts, she is a very, very well accomplished martial artist in her own right. A judo champion, a world judo champion. I believe she was the first American to medal at like the Pan American Games. I believe so. Like, please correct me if I'm wrong. Kill me in the comments if I've got that wrong. But she is highly, highly credentialed, highly skilled, and has a great level of expertise to offer. And academically, no slouch either. She's got a PhD. Like, this is a smart, well-accomplished woman that will be adding her thoughts to a athletic commission that is very, very busy and certainly needs all the help it can get as far as expertise is concerned. And I think it's also significant because for all the people that are still holding out hope that Ronda Rousey is going to come back to fight, this is probably the nail in the coffin. If Ronda were to come back, you would expect her to fight in her home state, a place where she's sold out several times and set records in the Los Angeles area. But if her mom is part of the commission, oh man, that conflict of interest sounds pretty crazy. So I think for all you people holding out hope for a rowdy comeback, hang it up. Her mom is part of the governing association now, so I think that's a wrap.
It's too bad. Her mom could have come down and been on the Texas commission, and it wouldn't have stopped us down here.
Oh man, nothing stops Texas. All right, fellas. So an additional note here that we got to talk about here. One Championship, big move for them. They have signed with Amazon Prime to host 12 primetime events in North America every year. So do you think this will improve, one, as far as the visibility of the brand in the US? Is this a good move for them?
I mean, I'm sure Jay will have, things to say about this. And he may even have some angles on it that I'm not aware of. But on the face of it, Amazon Prime during like North American time zone prime time, those two things alone will make the product far more accessible to the average fan. Like, yeah, like we always joke about their trillions and trillions thing, but a lot of people have Amazon Prime and actively use it to watch video products. I know I'm not alone in that, not by a factor of millions. And then, yeah, just the fact that it won't be going on at 3 a.m. But I mean, 3 a.m. is normal work hours for me, but not for most Americans. So yeah, on the face of it, this is a good thing.
Yeah, like I'm reminded of when Dana White used to always say about about the UFC or the Ultimate Fighter that it was in so many millions of homes, and that was a stat he threw.
167 countries worldwide.
Yeah. Well, you talk about a service like Amazon Prime, and just look outside your street every day, and how many Amazon trucks do you see going up and down, and how many times you come home to a package, or your neighbors are getting something delivered, and you think every place that package is being dropped off to has Amazon Prime Video as well. Whether they use it or not is a different story. Like, I have it simply because I didn't even know they came with video when I first got an Amazon Prime account. Then they started putting shows on there. I was like, oh, you can watch all this on there. So I started using it. But I mean, this is a pretty big deal. Someone who's a hardcore MMA fan such as myself, like, I barely ever get to watch one because the product was bouncing around from streaming service to website to YouTube and then geo blocked, and it was such a mess. But to have it on a service that I use all the time, like, yeah, I might be watching some more botch weight cuts and knees to the face of downed opponents.
See, I mean, yeah, you'll be able to get the Muay Thai and little gloves a little more at a regular hour. I'm not gonna trash on it as much as I thought I would. No, I'm just kidding. This deal, from the information I'm hearing, there was not a bidding war like One Championship hoped for their product. That everybody was clamoring to get their hands on One Championship. To be a little I don't know, a little hostile towards them, I suppose. It will give them the chance to add 200 million more to their how many billion potential watch audience. Like, that is the biggest claim that they can offer, is that now they'll be able to say that upwards of 200 million additional people will be able to watch it, or whatever the subscription counts are. I think it was 200 million worldwide. I think this Prime deal is for US and Canada, so maybe about 50 or something like that. Most of Amazon Prime is North American subscriptions. 12 events yearly will be prime time, but they'll still be taking place in the host country of Singapore. Are they going to be coming to the US and be broadcast that way? Are you going to disadvantage fighters by making them fight at 2 a.m? I don't know. And that's kind of a weird thing. And then also, you're still paywalling your product. Now, you're paywalling your product behind a popular service that a lot of people have, but you're still paywalling your product and adding another barrier to entry that is not going to be easy. And I say that because One Championship is not a household name, which means they're not going to get top placement on the what do you want to do right now. Like the press release talked about how Prime, some of the other people, the sports are on there. The WNBA games, I guess, can be on there. Some Yankees games, then some Seattle, middling teams like a soccer league or something like that. So it's not must-see live sports TV, and I don't think this is going to make people draw and go, oh, one's on Amazon Prime, unless they can find a way to market it and tell people about it. And I don't mean tell the media about it. I get enough caps locks emails as is. I'm talking, you got to let the people know, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do so, and that's why I look at this deal and I say, okay, it makes some sense. It will help. I appreciate not having to worry about a 5 a.m. curtain call for the stupid prelims or lead card or whatever it's called. But until I see something good coming from it, I'm still kind of holding my nose at it.
I mean, this is not something that I think is going to attract new viewers necessarily.
Right.
But the MMA fan who would watch otherwise if it was on at a more convenient time, or if they could find the fights on, would watch it. I think this helps that at least. Which really at the end of the day is not a bad thing. I mean, more people will be watching, period. And I think it's very clear more people will be watching. And this should be the end objective.
And of every promotion that sends their product out through a paid streaming service, One Championship is the first one that I already have the service. I didn't have to sign up for ESPN Plus. I didn't have to sign up for Showtime Sports. I didn't have to sign up for whatever the fuck PFL goes out over these days. Like, I've already got this. So to me, even as somebody who, like, I do watch a lot of One Championship events, I'll probably watch more of them now, as long as they're not tape delayed.
Yeah, I think the only way this would have been a better thing for them is if they were moving to ESPN Plus, because you already have all these hardcore MMA fans that have it just for MMA, just for the UFC, and just for PFL, and this will be another thing added to it. Or even if it was DAZN, where it's all combat sports related in the US. And well, I mean, they just abandoned MMA, so they'll would have anyway. Don't get me started on that. Yeah, I know. It upsets you too, baby. I know.
Yeah.
I know. All right, fellas. Well, speaking of PFL, this Friday, we're going to get more PFL action. The welterweight and women's lightweight rosters are in action. So pretty quickly here, any thoughts or people that you want to see succeed at welterweight? What's on your mind here, gentlemen?
If this isn't, I'm going to step on your toes because,
Please.
yeah, if this isn't a repeat of last year, I would be genuinely surprised. I don't see what the PFL has brought anybody or anything of note that will be able to change the trajectory that it had in 2021. And by that, I mean at welterweight, Ray Cooper and Magomed Karamov will fight each other unless there's an injury that knocks one out of the tournament. I mean, let's see. Cooper is fighting Carlos Leal, who was signed from Challenger Series, and Magomed Karamov is fighting Joao Severino, who's been around forever. We remember a funky tournament he had where he fought Brian Foster twice in one night, and then heel hooked him and they got knocked out. So he's a long-time staple. So it isn't the stiffest of competition. You can kind of look at these fights and go, okay, I can see who the A side is here, and I think to me that means Cooper, Magomed Karamov are the two, and there's nothing Rory McDonald is going to do about it. If Rory McDonald can barely get by Gleison Tebow, we're in trouble here. And at light, and we'll talk about that after.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a Rory McDonald that we questioned his motivation like several years ago at this point. I'm going to say the same thing I said about the welterweight tournament last year, which was almost identical bracket. I'd like to see Sabadou. I know he's not going to win, but he's fun to watch. He's definitely not going to win. He has a horrible style for this type of tournament. When you look at some of the wrestlers that are, that are in front of him, but he's fun to watch. So I'd like to see something crazy happen with him, and then that's kind of all I got to say about it.
Duffy, what are you thinking? Am I crazy, or is this?
Yeah, it would take an injury to keep us from just having the same final. I mean, these are the only two champs the welterweight division in PFL has ever had. I expect they'll meet again, but for what it's worth, it'll be a good fight. It's one of the higher level fights that can be made outside the UFC right now. Probably, yeah. It's one of the highest level fights that can be made outside of the UFC right now. I think both of these guys are probably top 10. They're top 10 quality welterweights, even if they haven't had a chance to prove it. Like, I think Magomed Karamov would slot right into the UFC and become a top 10 welterweight. Cooper, one of those guys who could knock out anybody on any given night, but against the kind of wrestlers that would lay ahead of him, might just have a little bit harder sledding into the top 10. But yeah, two very good fighters who they've put on exciting fights in their wins so far. So yeah, looking forward to that. And the rest of the division has not a whole lot to offer them.
Can I, since we know what the answer is going to be to the lightweight question, can I ask you guys another last question about the welterweights? Say Magomed Karamov or Ray Cooper goes through the tournament, wins it up, wins four wins, wins it, done, going on. Are they a top 15 welterweight to you? Which I'll read to you the last 5 guys on Sherdog: Chiesa, Masvidal, Michael Venom Page, Douglas Lima, Neil Magny. Would you put the winner of that 4-man tournament, or the 4 wins this year, put them over a Magny, who is a top 10, top 12 UFC guy?
No,
because that's the gatekeeper. And
here's the problem. I think either of them could beat Magny. I would probably favor MMK to do so, but neither of those guys is fighting any quality welterweights except for each other. You know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I'll say this: Magomed Karamov beating Chris Curtis twice in a row, all of a sudden has aged really well.
True.
Now that Curtis is like lighting people up in the UFC. Yeah,
What do you
maybe I
think?
need to rethink that.
Yeah. What do you think, Slappy?
Yeah, I'm with it. Like the body of work just isn't there to get ranked above Neil Magny. Like he's been in with some top names and has some serious quality wins. And even if he were to lose against him, if you put him in a head-to-head matchup, what we've seen so far, yeah, it's Magny gets the slot above those guys, if you ask me. You know, with like Roy McDonald being an exception because of what he was able to do before. But this is a current ranking list, so no, not even Roy McDonald at this point. All right, so I mean, as far as the lightweight women for PFL, I mean, Abigail Montez. I mean, this is her tournament to sweep. Yeah, this is it. I mean, really, the only question is Julia Budd or Kayla Harrison. I say Julia Budd.
It's so dire at 155.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Women's lightweight is like men's super heavyweight.
Yeah.
Like you just got a couple of circus freaks that can't make 145, some bad 145ers that have moved up, some bad 135ers that have moved up. Like it's miserable. Yeah, Harrison versus Bud will be interesting. If Harrison loses to Bud, obviously, or even if she has like a world of trouble with her, I think all the shine is gone from a potential matchup with Cyborg. All of her bargaining power with the UFC is gone. So she better just fight her way through this season, spike Julia Budd on her head, and like kick her into the third row of seats.
Yeah.
I mean, Julia Budd struggled getting past Caitlin Young back at the end of last season at 155.
Yep.
So do we think then obviously curveball here. Do we think, and PFL has said very clearly, I've read this on their documents, I've read this on the rules of the actual official rules and regulation of the league, that the league reserves the right to make the matches accordingly, including in the playoffs. It doesn't always have to be by seed. The PFL can decide we don't want 1 and 4 and 3 and 2 to fight each other. We want something else. It said that in the rules. Would it behoove the PFL to make sure that Harrison and Bud cannot fight, assuming they get to the playoffs and get to the top? Or are we going to see Harrison Bud like in June?
I think they probably try to preserve it for the final.
Yeah, it would be the biggest fight they could put together. If I'm PFL, I'm probably just going to pull that trigger while it's available to you.
Instead of losing it in the possibility that
exactly,
she gets beaten by Larissa Pacheco or something.
Yeah, we've seen stranger things happen in tournaments. So we've seen what happens when you stack the bracket to form the ultimate final, and how that always falls flat on its face. Yeah, so if it's there, do it. And worst case scenario, it's a rematch if they somehow make it to the finals. I mean, we talked about how that could potentially be a good thing, I think, last week. In reference to the men's lightweight division. So maybe, but yeah, I mean, we came to see a slaughter. That's what this is all about. So, all right, fellas. So we do have a couple things I want to briefly touch on. One, and then we'll give a little more discussion to the other. Bellator Paris is coming up Friday as well, I believe, and we've got Ryan Bader and Cheick Kongo 2, the super anticipated rematch. Is this time for Kongo to finally get a belt here? Do we see it happening? Yes or no?
No,
me either.
At age 54, Cheick Kongo will finally win a Bellator belt. Let me be clear.
Elias laughing at that one.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right.
He's like, She's like, he's old enough to be my grandpa.
Yeah, on Sherlock Fight Finder, he does say that Kongo is 46, but there's a discrepancy based on past fights where Cheick Kongo is allegedly 8 years older than he claims to be right now. Anyway, considering what we saw in the first, how many? 4 minutes? So like almost 4 minutes of their first fight, you knew how it was going to play out. Like I've been in your recap show with Keith Schillen, you talked about how Krzysztof Jotko and Gerald Meerschaert were fighting. And at the end of the first round, you knew there was nothing that would possibly change. There was no new development, no new wrinkle. Meerschaert wasn't going to be able to accomplish anything and do what he normally does to hit a round 3 submission. And it was going to be like that. No adjustments would be made to make it possible. In this situation, I see that first round between Bader and Kongo. I go, there's nothing besides a jump knee when Bader crashes forward for a double that would stop that fight from playing out like it did when Ryan Bader fought Matt Mitrione, when he just ruins him and holds him there for however long and doesn't get the finish and makes us sad.
And has 0 significant strikes landed on him.
Yeah, they're all ground strikes of little import. And Cheick Kongo looks around and goes, and is very frustrated. And the Parisian crowd goes crazy and boos and starts throwing stuff. We might have a no contest due to fans riot. That maybe we can look forward to that.
Well, I hadn't even thought of that, but I was going to say that, to me, the second most likely outcome after Bader by decision would be a no contest, like due to a foul that was ruled inadvertent, like just another eye poke or Kongo like kneeing him in the nuts or something like that. That'd literally be more likely to me than Kongo winning. But I hadn't even thought about people throwing their like glasses of red wine into the cage.
Throw croissants and
throwing their plates of snails into the cage.
Yeah.
and containers of olive oil and sea salt.
Just saying, we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, like I was gonna say the same thing about Kongo. Like I would think it would be more likely that he gets like DQ'd or something for knees to the groin or something. It's how many Kongo fouls are we gonna see here? That's sort of the more interesting thing about this. But I don't know. This doesn't really get me all excited. But what does get me excited, gentlemen, UFC 274. Yeah. So let's go ahead and ask a question that we tend to ask when it's UFC pay-per-view time. Who you got? Jay, I'm going to start with you. Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson, a battle of 2 standout lightweights have been around for quite some time. Who you got?
I look at this fight and I think it should be a lot closer than it is on the betting line, at least. As of the taping of the show on Monday, Michael Chandler is like a minus 400 favorite. And to me, that's surprising because of what we've seen I understand because Ferguson's on a 3-fight skid where his last 2 fights, he got handled on the ground, and Michael Chandler is a very competent wrestler when he decides to be. I don't think he will decide to be. I don't think he wants to. I think he has kind of embraced the Justin Gaethje mentality when Justin Gaethje was coming over from World Series of Fighting going, yeah, I wrestled in Arizona, but I don't really care. I'm just going to hit you in the face and kick your legs. And I think Chandler is going to come out firing, and I think Ferguson is going to enjoy that and appreciate that. So I think that Chandler has more horsepower, and he's younger by 2 years, and he's got more pop in his shots, but I cannot count Ferguson out. If I had to pick somebody based on the betting lines, I'd pick Ferguson because at plus 300, that's sweet. But just a straight pick, I think I'm going to go with Chandler by very bloody decision. But I'm watching Ferguson very closely, and I would put my money on him if I had to. Anybody?
All right, Ben, who you got?
I am leaning Chandler, and I don't have the kind of confidence in Ferguson that Jay seems to. Just Ferguson, three fight losing streak aside, has stopped being the Ferguson who, yeah, he takes some shots, but he comes back with more shots. Every fun he fights looks like he's been through a wood chipper afterwards, and he's this just terrifying whirlwind of damage and cardio and vicious pace. Just he hasn't had it recently. If Chandler chooses to embrace his wrestling, which is still elite, this becomes a grind out on the ground You know, the days of Ferguson hurting people and then snapping up a front headlock and a Bravo choke seem to be over. If Chandler just goes headhunting and looks for the highlight reel knockout, Ferguson's chances improve. But I still favor Chandler heavily in this one.
I as well. I think this is a fight for Michael Chandler. Tony Ferguson has had, granted, he's been against the top flight opposition, so it is hard to just definitively write him off. We just had a long discussion about Andrei Arlovski in a similar position back in the day. But what I'm seeing in these Ferguson losses is a loss of who Ferguson has been. That resilience to come back, the sudden switching of game plans and whatnot, almost like erratic behavior that worked out to his benefit in the cage. It just doesn't seem to be what it once was. I think the X factor though is that Michael Chandler, since coming to the UFC, has found himself on the receiving end of some brutality that also is on the heels of brutality that he received as Bellator champion or just a top contender in Bellator. Maybe this is where all the wheels start falling off, and we see two guys who have sustained a great deal of damage in their careers kind of finally getting to the end of the road. But I don't see that quite with Chandler, because he's still been able to do what he does at a more consistent rate. I think this is his fight to lose. I think it's going to be a very clear-cut decision, and he'll get his hand raised in the end. So. All right, now we've got a title fight, a rematch actually, of the first UFC women's strawweight belt. The first time these two met was much different circumstances. Carla Esparza gets a crack at Rose Namajunas, who she previously defeated to become the inaugural champ. This time she is hoping to get gold back on her shelf. Jay, who you got?
I looked at the line, and we're going betting again, and I see that Rose Namajunas is almost a 200 favorite. So that's a pretty significant line that people think that she's going to handle Carla Esparza. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And it isn't just because I have embodied my inner Tyler Treese and wish for chaos, and the fact that I would very much enjoy the strawweight division to completely come full circle and end with the first champion and go all the way around after what is it, 7 and change years now, and just to kind of have that laugh moment of, wow, nothing has changed whatsoever. And here's why I think that's the case. Because Rose Namajunas has not shored up her takedown defense to the degree that will be able to stop Carla Esparza from doing exactly what Carla Esparza does best. And I think that's a problem when you look at Rose's last fight. Now, I know I was at a disadvantage during the play-by-play of the rematch of Rose versus Weili Zhang because of personal issues, and Mr. Duffy had to bail me out during play-by-play after the first round ended. But I was able to eventually come back and rewatch the fight. To the degree that I saw Weili Zhang get takedowns and rack up enough control time to where I thought, okay, Zhang isn't a takedown specialist in my eyes. I view her as more of a striker with good top game than a grappler with a big right hand like a Hendricks or whatever. And I think whatever Weili Zhang was able to do in the third round and in the second or the first, when she was able to ground Namajunas and do work, I think Carla will be able to excel and exceed at that. I think she'll be able to make that more difficult. And we know the fight was very close between Rose and Weili Zhang. People scored it, both ways, I think. It was a split decision, I believe. So literally the judges thought the same thing that I'm saying. I think that Carla Esparza doing exactly what she brings to the table and what got her to the dance is going to be the kind of thing that defeats Rose Namajunas. This is a bad stylistic matchup 7.5 years after it happened, and I think that Cookie Monster is going to be the champion, and then the UFC, Dana White might not even be in the belt, might not even be in the cage to give the belt, because he'd be like, what are we even doing here?
Ben, who you got?
I do have Namajunas in this one. It's interesting that, yeah, it's been about 7.5 years. It was December 2014 since the Tough 22 finale that inaugurated Esparza as the first strawweight champ. She was the slight favorite at that time. She is 7 years on a maybe slightly refined version of the same fighter she was. Namajunas has improved by leaps and bounds. I mean, at the time they fought, like, she was not a good striker. She was not physically very strong, and even as a grappler, was more of a quick strike opportunist than like a serious lockdown grappler. She was just this kind of like willowy, explosive athlete that could do some pretty remarkable things, but was nowhere near a finished product as a fighter. Her striking has come on by such leaps and bounds. First, just with 5 more years at Rufus Sport, and then going to Trevor Whitman, perhaps the ultimate striker whisperer in the sport right now. You just think what he's done to the striking games of Kamaru Usman, Justin Gaethje, Rose Namajunas. I think Esparza could get takedowns here. I mean, she's one of the best wrestlers in the division, if not the best. But I think they'll be harder to come by this time. Namajunas is, I mean, she has fast, untelegraphed kicks and knees. She has much better footwork than she used to. She has a great jab now that hurts and helps her maintain distance. I think it's going to be much harder for Esparza to do things she did in their first fight. And meanwhile, Namajunas has a variety of ways to end the fight at any moment. So it's a 5-round fight. To me, that always is going to favor the more dynamic finisher, just because they're going to have a more opportunities to do something. So I do have Namajunas in this one. I have her by a late stoppage, maybe 4th or 5th round, either a TKO or hurts her on the feet and then swarms and gets a submission on the ground.
I'm picking up what Ben's putting down here. I see Rose winning this fight. I think the improvements that she's had since they last fought were just leaps and bounds. Like, she's just not the same fighter at all. Carla Esparza has certainly almost like reinvented herself by doing the same thing, in a strange way. And her style is perfect for what it is. It's very meat and potatoes, just gets the job done. But that sort of thing doesn't seem to work on Rose anymore. I think she has a lot of trouble getting that takedown, not because her takedown defense, the Rose's takedown defense has drastically improved. I think the footwork is going to make it hard for her to get in there to grab that leg. There already is a length disparity that's going to play to her advantage as an improved striker. I like to think of Rose, the early iteration of her that fought for the inaugural title, was sort of like lightning in a bottle. Like, if you could contain her, then it was great. But she could just be all over the place. If you were able, like Esparza was able to grab a hold of her and hold her down and just stop her from bouncing all over the place and just being so hyper and energetic. But she doesn't fight like that anymore. She's a lot more methodical. She's so much more surgical with her striking. I think this is going to be a showcase fight for her. I honestly will be very surprised if this goes past the 3rd round. Rose Namajunas should have a very dominant win here.
I would like to point out real quick to throw all your guys' ideas and put them in the outside garbage, that Rose Namajunas has a perfect pattern since joining the UFC, where she will lose a fight, win 3, lose that 4th fight, win 3, lose that 4th fight, and she's on a 3-fight win streak right now.
Oh, the stat.
Just saying, it's like TJ Dillashaw's 4-1. I'm saying.
All right.
Watch for that.
All right. We got our eyes open. All right, so let's go ahead to the main event for the lightweight belt. Charles Do Bronx Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Jay, who you got?
Kick that. I want Duffy to answer that one.
You want Duffy? Okay. Duffy it is. Duffy, who you got?
I know I'm kind of boring here, just going straight chalk on these top 3 fights, but I do have Charles de Bronx in this one. I have repeatedly picked against this man, even while acknowledging that he's not the guy he was 6 or 7 years ago. He's not the guy who had weird trouble making weight, who visibly quit in fights, who was the ultimate front runner. Even while acknowledging that was no longer the case, I continued to pick against him wrongly against, people like Dustin Poirier. I'm done with that. Oliveira, like, his weaknesses have become strengths. He comes back from adversity and he is just nasty. Justin Gaethje, I think, has as good a chance to beat de Bronx as any of the people he's fought in his last 4 or 5 fights. On paper, he's probably the hardest hitter, or he's right up there with Chandler for like the hardest just single shot puncher. He has some of the best leg kicks in the game. He's a very good defensive wrestler. We all know he doesn't use his offensive wrestling, but and except for people named Khabib, getting Gaethje down has not been easy. But I don't think it's going to matter. I think Oliveira will outstrike him, even if they're on the feet. He's gone from being, we just talked about Namajunas. Oliveira, maybe even more so, has gone from being a liability as a striker to it being a strength for him. And then he is the greatest submission grappler probably in MMA history at this point. Give me Oliveira by some kind of finish in the middle rounds, like 3rd, 4th round, probably a submission.
All right, Jay, who you got?
I'm going all upsets. I don't care if I miss all 3 of them, and I can understand how I could miss all 3 of them. When I look at Charles de Bronx and I look at how he has developed and his incredible win streak, it is because, exactly as Duffy has said, that he has turned the major deficiencies had into strengths of his. He was not a striker. He wasn't even a Damian Maia serviceable enough boxer on the feet until you can punch your way into a take. Now, he was the kind of guy who would put himself in danger by trying to throw hands with an Anthony Pettis type. Great striker, yes, but my point is he would try and do that. But my thoughts are, seeing his last couple fights, he has turned that improvement into overconfidence in his ability to fire back and hurt somebody. And it has worked well. It has worked well against Michael Chandler. It has worked well against Dustin Poirier. In both of those fights, Poirier and Chandler had Oliveira on roller skates, on ice, in trouble, whatever you want to describe it as. And they weren't able to finish the job because Oliveira was able to do enough to get their respect, to get their attention, and back them off to not be able to finish the fight. Like there was a combination that Poirier had where he rocked him, and Oliveira tries to slip back and knee him, and he's doing just enough to be able to get back and throw bombs with him. When it comes to a Justin Gaethje, if you don't put him out or do the Khabib Nurmagomedov thing, which you're not going to do, if you don't put him out, he's going to keep coming until you are burger. And I think this really favors Gaethje in the current mentality of Charles Oliveira trying to beat somebody at their own game. He knew Chandler was going to come in and throw bombs, so he did the same. He knew Poirier was going to try and tear him apart. Poirier technical boxing, get in, sharp shots, and he ate some of them and he kept firing back. When it comes to Justin Gaethje, I don't think the power disparity will be to his benefit, because I don't think that Oliveira hits as hard as Poirier. I don't think he hits as hard as Chandler, but the volume he was able to put on them hurt them back. When it comes to Gaethje, he hits too hard for me to think that Oliveira will be able to have the wherewithal to fire back intelligently and effectively like he did against Chandler and Poirier. So I think because of this situation, we're going to get like 2.5 minutes of absolute lunacy. We're talking Charles Oliveira makes his entire camp, the Shootbox Diego Lima team, go, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? This is Justin Gaethje you're fighting. Stop doing what you're doing. And just throws caution to the wind, bites down on his gum shield, all of the terms, and slings it out. Which means that we're going to get a first-round knockout for Justin Gaethje after they're both rocked, they're both hurt, they're both just hanging on for dear life, and Gaethje just still, to me, has the ability to reel back and do a little more. And we saw that in the Michael Chandler fight, where he rose to that occasion and passed Chandler. I just see Justin Gaethje as finally getting the time to get that belt around his waist in the UFC. And it's going to be mayhem for as long as it lasts.
I'm going to side with Jay on this one. I think Justin Gaethje walks away with the UFC title. You look at Gaethje's record, you look at the names on his record, and one thing that if you think back to all those fights, no one has been able to make, except Khabib Nurmagomedov, has been able to make Justin Gaethje fight any differently than Justin Gaethje wants to fight.
Yes.
And the only reason why Khabib was able to do that is because his style is made for that sort of thing. Charles Oliveira invites the chaos too much. Like, this is someone who's too willing to engage. And as an entertaining and as successful as he's been with it, this is the wrong guy to do that with. The only people who've been able to beat, besides Khabib, of course, been able to beat Justin Gaethje have been the people who played that game better for one reason or another. Think of the Poirier fight. You think of Alvarez. You think of some of the success that Michael Johnson had in their fight, and it was someone who was able to hit just as hard in certain moments, just to out hand speed them or whatever the case may be, to employ a more solid brawl game in that moment, in those exchanges. Charles Oliveira, for all the credit we can give him for the improvements he's made, it doesn't seem to be that guy. At least not that guy at the caliber that Justin Gaethje is for this sort of fight. I don't see a world where Gaethje comes charging with a head full of steam and Oliveira does a slick leg kick and a check hook and steps to the outside and forces Gaethje to reset and do this charge at him all over again, and then forces him to go for a takedown, and he wraps up a choke. I don't see the fight playing out that way. I don't think Oliveira is that guy. Oliveira is the guy who's going to meet you in the middle, and whatever happens, but he has those extra weapons. I just don't think those weapons are going to be useful. I think he's going to get in there and feel a different sort of power while he's taking what Poirier could throw at him. And yes, Poirier had his knockout over Gaethje. While he's taking what Chandler can give him, and yes, Chandler gave Gaethje all he could handle when they fought. This is different. This is styles make fights, and this style just does not fit Charles Oliveira at all. I think he loses the belt Saturday. No, but it's going to be a damn good fight.
Oh,
it's going to be so good. All right, fellas. So, one last question before we wrap things up here. What is your potential fight of the night for this card, excluding the main event that we can't wait to see?
Go ahead. One of you guys.
I mean, Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams kind of jumps out. Okay, you told me to go first.
No, I was thinking I would be slick and expect somebody to go with the other.
I mean, I could have taken. Well, I mean, there are a couple other obvious ones, but that one, they're two guys who are very much in the same position. They're already certified action hero fighters, but they're also on the cusp of jumping into the top 15 in still possibly the hardest division in the whole UFC in which to do that. So the stakes are a little higher. They're going to be tense, but they also can't help who and what they are. So yeah, that one should just be pure fire for as long as it lasts.
Yeah, agreed. I'm gonna say if Matt Snell wins, he's gonna win. He's gonna, like, Matt Snell beats Brandon Royval, that will end up being fight of the night, simply because he's gonna donate that bonus back to the UFC. So Matt Snell, that's what they're gonna do.
Man, and I guess I'm happy this one's still on the board. I kind of was hoping it would be. At 76 combined years of age, two gentlemen who are long-time heroes of the sport and bonus winners and mayhem fighters are towing the line in a fight that you go, wow, didn't they fight 12 years ago? No, they never did. And Donald Cerrone and Joe Lozon. They're older, they're tired, They're shop worn. They can't take shots as they used to, which is the perfect time to make them fight one another. Like when Matt Brown fought Brian Barberena, two guys that are slowing, and you're not sure if they're going to be able to get it going, and they're pulled something off. Like when Matt Brown fought Tim Means, maybe it's a Matt Brown thing. Anyway, I think because of the level of both of them right now, I think it is perfectly matched for them to hit each other very hard many times. There'll be blood, there'll be damage, there'll be swelling, there'll be laughter and high fives and hugs. And at the end of the day, if for some reason Oliveira Gaethje doesn't get fight of the night because it's too short, and Gaethje instead gets performance of the night for the knockout, but Cerrone versus Lozon is my dark horse action fight of the night.
I mean, that seems like an obvious one. I just don't think it's going to be that good of a fight because of when we're getting it and how shop worn they are. But we've been proven wrong about this scenario before. So I will say definitively the worst fight is going to be OSP and Shogun. The rematch nobody has been asking for.
It's either going to be super boring if Shogun wins, or it's going to be really depressing if he loses. Because if he loses, it's going to be something violent,
like slipping on a skateboard.
Yeah, and maybe I'm crazy for this one. Macy Chiasson and Norma Dumont, that might be little nuts.
At 145, I think you're right. I think at 135, it would be kind of a bummer because they'd both be fried from the weight cut.
Yeah, but I think this might be the dark horse for like action.
And it's a title eliminator. The winner of that fight is closer to a title shot than anyone else on the card outside of like the top two fights.
Yeah.
Like if Macy Chiasson or Norman Dumont wins, they're closer to a title shot than Michael Chandler is if he wins.
Yeah.
They can fight Nunes next if they want.
Sure.
Yeah.
If she wants. Yeah. How about that? That's how bad that division is.
It's a good division.
And lightweight is worse.
All right, fellas. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Living Death Show. Big thanks to Ben. Big thanks to Jay for holding it down. As always, you can find their work on SureDog.com. There'll be plenty of fight night coverage and post fights and preview articles and whatnot between the two. And Jay, I know you're on play-by-play again. So
PFL and UFC.
Ooh, man, it's a busy week for you, Jay. All right, so remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.